Hey, 8th graders! It is Wednesday, and we are here today to tell you about the project you're going to work on. But we are going to start today with story time. So, Paul, do you like stories? Paul loves stories. So, I'm going to share a story with you, and the reason I'm doing this is because it's going to help you to understand how to do your project. So, bear with me as we read this story. And this story is called The Boy Who Ran Away. And it's written by Irene Elmer and illustrated by Sally Matthews. Those are the people that made the book. There was a family once with two sons. The older son did what needed doing. The younger son did what he liked. He said, "I had rather not be part of this family." But you need money to do what you like. The younger son had a bright idea. He asked his father for half of the family's money. That was his share. Then he went away to do what he liked with it. He did not spend it wisely. Pretty soon, it was all gone. He wondered why nobody liked him anymore. He is without friends. There had been no rain all year. The ground dried up. Plants died. There was little to eat. People begged him for money, but he had no money left to give. He had to beg, too, and nobody would give him a piece of bread, even. Finally, he got a job feeding pigs. It was the only job there was. It was not an agreeable job, and he was so hungry he went after the pig food and ate it. He said to himself, "I wanted to do what I liked, but now look at me. Is this what I like?" he said. "No." He said, "I had better go home to my father. I will say, 'Father, you can't let me be an important part of the family now, like a son, but you might let me be a small part, say a servant.'" He went home. But his father saw him as soon as he got near the house, and he ran out and kissed him because he was so glad to get him back. The son was ashamed to be treated like an important part of the family. He started to say he could only be a small part now, say a servant. His father didn't listen. He was too happy. He sent for the best clothes to dress him. And he gave a big party with dancing and lots to eat. He said, "My younger son is part of the family again." But the older son said, "I'm part of the family too, and I always have been, and you never gave a party for me. Oh well, at least God loves me, and God couldn't love him, not after all the things he's done." "Why couldn't he?" their father said. "I love him after all the things he's done." "Of course, but you're his father." "And what do we call God?" "Our Father," said the older son. "Oh." "You see," their father said, "but I still don't see why you want to have a party." "Because our family is back together. Isn't it a day to celebrate? Come, let's welcome him." The end. Okay, so I read you that story because I wanted you to see how to take a story from the Bible and make it understandable for children. because that's what you're going to be doing in our project. And it's important that you think about your audience when you're doing this. So I'm going to show you the instructions, and I'm going to talk through the instructions a little bit, and then we will kind of get a picture of what this project looks like. And if you have questions after I'm done talking about it and after you've read everything, it's really important that you remember that you can always email me and ask me your questions, and either I can answer them by email or we can set up a Zoom chat so that you understand exactly what you're doing for this project, because it's a test grade and it's going to count a lot for your grade for this quarter. Okay, so let me switch over to the instructions and I will go through what you're going to do. Okay, so you can find these instructions on Moodle. The title of the project is Passion Project, and there's instructions and there's a rubric. So you have a week to do this project, and this is the only thing that you're going to do for Bible class today and on Monday, other than, of course, your chapel reflection, and next week you'll have devotions. But focusing on this and doing this for these 2 lessons, and you might have to work on it a little bit more because it's a project. So your objective is to create a book or a video for kids that relates the story of Jesus' death and resurrection and explains how Jesus saves us through these events. So you're taking everything that we learned in the last month in this unit, and you're going to put it into a book or a video that you're making for kids. So your audience is children, think 6 to 9 years old, and it's really important that you think about that audience. So that's why I read this story to begin with for you, so you can see how they took that story of the prodigal son and put it in language that kids can understand, and use pictures and explain things really clearly and everything. So you need to think about that before you start. If you have younger brothers and sisters, you have an advantage because you can actually talk to them about this and you can kind of get their idea of whether or not they can understand what you're saying. So there are 6 parts that you need to include in your project, in your final product that you're making. And basically this is just covering what we did in this unit. So start with the Triumphal Entry when Jesus comes into Jerusalem, include the Last Supper, then when Jesus gets arrested and tried, hung on the cross, and then when he resurrects. And then at the end, you need to include briefly an explanation of how salvation comes through this. Just like at the end of the book I read you, they talked about how God loves us like a father, right? So you have to explain that a little bit in your project. So those are the things that you need to include, and make sure that you include all of them, but you don't have to have every single detail of every part, because then it will take a really, really long time. So think about the main things to include in those parts and make it clear and simple, but stick to the main points because you're talking to kids, remember. Okay, then there's another point I want to make about using Bible verses. So I do not want you to copy the verses directly. I don't want this to be a book where you just copy the verses and then draw some pictures, or a video where you just read the verses and then act it out. I want you to take the ideas and communicate them in simple, clear language that a child would understand. Now, you can, in some cases, use a few direct quotes, like, for example, Jesus on the cross, and you want to have him say, "It is finished," then do that. You may not need to change that to make it simpler, because kids can understand "it is finished," right? But if you do that, if you have direct quotes, then I would like you to include at the end a verses cited page and put the references of all the quotes that you used. So you would, if you used "it is finished," you would say, this is from Luke 23:40. I forget which verse it is, but 46 or something like that. And then I can see that you recognize this is where you used a direct quote. But don't use a lot of direct quotes. Keep those to a minimum, and mainly rewrite in your own words. Okay, so some specific instructions for each option. You can choose to do a book or a video. Either one, don't do both. If you're doing a book, then first you need to know all of the words and the illustrations need to be created by you. So don't copy pictures even from the internet. And you can either write and draw it on physical paper, or you can do it on your iPad with Adobe Sketch or any of those programs like that. You can choose how you want to do that, but you have to create it yourself. You need, if you're doing a book, you need 6 pages, 1 per story section, but you can have more than 6 pages. If you have a title page, then that doesn't count toward one of your 6. Make 6 pages within the book. And then you're going to take pictures of each page and submit that to Moodle. Put it into PDF for me. That will make it easier. And I put instructions on Moodle for that. If you're doing the video, then you need to, again, make sure the video was created by you. Don't copy any portion of it from the internet. If you're doing a video, you can retell the story any way you want. You can act it out with your family members. You can use Legos or stuffed animals like I do sometimes in the lessons that I'm doing. Or if you can think of another creative way to retell the story in a video, that's great. Your video should be at least 2 minutes long, so that's your minimum length for video is 2 minutes, because you need to have enough time to talk about each of the sections. And for video, you're going to save that to OneDrive and then share the link with me on Moodle. And I put instructions for that on Moodle as well. So this is a test grade, as I said, 30 points in the summative category. We haven't had anything in the summative category yet, so this will significantly impact your grade. And there is a rubric, which I've also posted on Moodle, that is a separate document from this, so you can look at that to see how you're going to be graded. So that is what you're working on for the next week for Bible. Please, 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 if you have questions, make sure you email me so that you don't do it wrong. And I will be available to answer those questions by email or Zoom if you really need to talk to me. So just let me know if you have questions. And I really look forward to seeing what you create next week. So have fun.